The boardroom felt suffocating as I watched Marcus strut around the table, waving papers like they were winning lottery tickets. 10 years of building my company from the ground up, and he thought he could take it all with a few forged signatures. You should see your face, he laughed, loosening his designer tie. Did you really think I'd let you run this forever? A woman with a high school diploma playing CEO. My name is Rachel Chen, and at 42, I was watching my husband attempt to steal everything I'd built. The irony? When I met Marcus 12 years ago, he was a junior accountant drowning in student debt. I was the owner of a small but growing tech company, looking for someone to help manage the books. He seemed perfect then, smart, ambitious, and supportive of my vision. He understood numbers in a way I never did, and I trusted him completely. That was my first mistake. The board already approved the transfer of power. Marcus continued, sliding documents across the polished mahogany table. Your signatures on everything. Really, you should thank me for making it so easy. No messy legal battles. I picked up the papers, examining the forged signatures he'd somehow managed to create. My hand didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. Because Marcus had made one crucial error. He thought I was just another self-made entrepreneur who'd gotten lucky. He had no idea I'd been planning for this moment for 3 years. It started with a lipstick stain. Not on his collar. Marcus was too careful for that. It was on a financial report he'd handed me, a smudge of red that matched his secretary's signature shade. That night, I started digging through our company records, and what I found made my blood run cold. Small discrepancies in the books, unauthorized transfers, board meetings I supposedly attended while I was out of the country. But instead of confronting him, I did something else. I started buying shares in our company through shell corporations, using the money I'd set aside for our anniversary trip to Paris. Each time Marcus met with his lawyer, thinking he was orchestrating my downfall, I was quietly increasing my ownership stake. By the time he made his move, I owned 80% of the company through various entities he knew nothing about. I'm giving you a week to clear out your office, Marcus said, checking his Rolex, the one I'd bought him for his last birthday. Be grateful I'm not having security escort you out now. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. That's very kind of you, Marcus. I'll need that time to gather my things. He frowned, clearly thrown by my calm demeanor. That's it? No fighting back? No tears? Why would I cry? I asked, picking up my briefcase. Everything happens for a reason, right? As I walked out of the boardroom, my heels clicking against the marble floor, I could feel his eyes on my back. He was probably congratulating himself, thinking he'd finally won, that the woman who gave him everything was walking away with nothing. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Sandra, it's Rachel. Remember that contingency plan we discussed? It's time. Sandra, my lawyer for the past 20 years, had helped me set up the shell corporations. She'd warned me about Marcus 3 years ago when she noticed the first signs of his deception. Men like him, she'd said, they always think they're the smartest person in the room. Use that. And I had. Every step of his plan to take over my company had played right into my hands. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, watching employees filter in with their coffee cups and concerned glances. News of Marcus's takeover had spread quickly. I could see the pity in their eyes, the woman who built everything, now losing it to her husband. By noon, Marcus had moved his things into my office. My family photos were already in a box by the door, replaced by his pretentious art pieces and that hideous modern desk he'd been eyeing for months. He even changed the security codes, probably worried I'd try to steal client files or company secrets. I've scheduled a company-wide meeting for this afternoon, he announced, lounging in my chair. Time to inform everyone about the changes in leadership. I nodded, continuing to pack my belongings. Of course. Will you be keeping Sarah on as CFO? Sarah, he laughed. No, I'm bringing in my own team. Can't have your loyal subjects hanging around, causing trouble. Sarah had been with me since the beginning, when we were working out of my garage with nothing but 2 laptops and a dream. She was also the only other person besides Sandra who knew about my contingency plan. The company meeting was set for 3 p.m. in the main conference room. As employees filed in, Marcus stood at the front, practically glowing with self-satisfaction. I sat quietly in the back, next to Sarah, who was gripping her tablet so hard her knuckles had turned white. As you've probably heard, Marcus began, there have been some changes in ownership. I know change can be scary, but I assure you, under my leadership, this company will reach new heights. That's when Sarah stood up. Actually, Mr. Chen, there's been a slight update to the ownership structure that you should be aware of. Marcus frowned. I don't remember asking for your input, Sarah. In fact, consider this your. Perhaps, I interrupted, standing up as well. You should take a look at these documents first. Sandra chose that moment to walk in, carrying a stack of papers that made Marcus's earlier display look like a post-it note. Behind her came two members of the board. The real ones, not the stand-ins Marcus had used to approve his takeover. What's this? Marcus demanded, his confidence wavering for the first time. This, Sandra said, her voice carrying across the now silent room, is documentation showing that Firetech Industries, Summit Ventures, and Highland Capital, 3 of your largest shareholders, are actually owned by your wife. The color drained from Marcus's face as Sandra continued laying out documents. Together, these entities control 80% of the company's shares, which means any decisions about leadership need to be approved by the majority shareholder. That's impossible, Marcus sputtered. I vetted every major shareholder personally. Did you? I asked, walking to the front of the room, or did you just see what you expected to see? A bunch of impressive-sounding investment firms that seemed eager to support your plans. The room was dead silent as realization dawned on his face. Every step he'd taken to seize control had been built on a foundation of lies. Lies that were now crumbling beneath him. You can't do this, he hissed, grabbing my arm as I passed him. I'm your husband. I pulled away, my voice steady. Actually, as of this morning, you're not. The divorce papers were filed an hour ago. You might want to check your email. The collective gasp from our employees was almost comical. Marcus reached for his phone with shaking hands, only to find his access to the company's servers had already been revoked. Security will escort you out, I said, nodding to the 2 guards who had appeared at the door. Don't worry about packing up, we'll send your things to your new address. Oh, and Marcus, you might want to check the prenup you signed. The infidelity clause is particularly interesting. As Marcus was led out, still protesting, I turned to address the stunned employees. I owe you all an explanation and you'll get one. But first, we have work to do. Sarah, could you pull up the quarterly projections? The room slowly came back to life, but nothing was the same. The whispers had already started. How had I known? How long had I been planning this? But more importantly, what kind of leader orchestrates something like this? They were about to find out. The aftermath of Marcus's removal sent shockwaves through the industry. Within hours, news had spread about how the wife of a would-be corporate usurper had orchestrated one of the most elegant takedowns in recent business history. I spent the next week in meetings reassuring clients and partners that the company was stable. But something interesting happened. Instead of causing panic, the incident actually strengthened our position. Clients who had been hesitant to work with us suddenly showed renewed interest. Your handling of the situation, one CEO told me, showed exactly the kind of strategic thinking we want in a partner. Marcus, meanwhile, was discovering just how thoroughly I'd outmaneuvered him. The prenup he'd signed included a clause about infidelity that not only protected my personal assets but required him to repay every penny he'd earned during our marriage if he was caught cheating. The evidence I'd gathered over the years, the hotel receipts, the secret bank accounts, the photos his secretary had been all too happy to share once she realized he'd been playing her too, was overwhelming. He's trying to negotiate, Sandra told me during one of our daily briefings, offering to drop any claims to company assets if you waive the prenup penalties. I considered it for a moment, then shook my head. No deals. He needs to learn that actions have consequences. The company thrived in the following months. Without Marcus's secret draining of resources, our profits increased by 40%. The toxic culture he'd fostered among certain executives cleared up once they realized their protector was gone. One morning, about 6 months after the takeover attempt, I arrived at the office to find an envelope on my desk. Inside was a letter from Marcus's mother, Margaret. I always knew you were smart, she wrote, but I never realized just how capable you were. Marcus told me everything. Not willingly, but the truth has a way of coming out. I want you to know that while he's my son, I understand why you did what you did. He needed this lesson, even if he doesn't see it yet. I folded the letter and tucked it away in my desk. Margaret had always been kind to me, even when her son wasn't. Her words meant more than she probably realized. The real changes came in how I ran a company. The experience had taught me valuable lessons about trust and vigilance. I implemented new oversight measures, created a more transparent corporate structure, and established a foundation to help women in business protect themselves from similar situations. 1 year after Marcus's failed takeover, I stood in the same conference room where everything had come to a head. We were celebrating our most successful quarter ever, and I had an announcement to make. As some of you know, I began looking at the faces of people who had stood by me through everything. We're launching a new initiative today. The Phoenix program will provide resources, legal support, and mentorship to women entrepreneurs who find themselves in vulnerable positions. Because sometimes the biggest threats to our success come from those closest to us. Sarah, now our COO, was the first to applaud. The rest of the room followed suit, and I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with victory or revenge. This was about transformation, turning a painful experience into something that could help others. Marcus, last I heard, he was working as a junior accountant at a small firm in Denver, living in a studio apartment and driving the same car he had when I first met him. Sometimes karma has a perfect sense of irony. The company continues to grow, but more importantly, it grows the right way, with transparency, integrity, and a commitment to lifting others up rather than tearing them down. The shell corporations I created to protect myself from Marcus now fund programs that help other women protect themselves and their dreams. In the end, Marcus did teach me something valuable. Success isn't just about building something great, it's about being smart enough to protect it. He thought he could take everything from me, but instead he gave me the push I needed to become even stronger. Now, when people ask me about Marcus and the takeover attempt, I just smile and say, sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. Because while he was plotting to steal my company, I was learning the most important lesson in business. Trust is good, but documentation is better. The conference room where this all ended is still there, but I've had it renovated. The mahogany table where Marcus once strutted around with his forged documents has been replaced with a modern design that features a subtle phoenix pattern in the wood grain. It's a daily reminder that from the ashes of betrayal, something stronger can rise.